Now we start to get inside the part that I really like. We became very methodology, my approach. I don't like when we try to develop a subject, we like to develop a subject by method. So I decided, since we arrived, we decided to develop and understand why Sangiovese, like a few other grape varieties around the world, is strongly influenced by the soil. It is much more important, the soil, than anything else about Sangiovese. And when you talk about soils, probably is so influenced also by something that is next to the soil, that is a rooster. So we can say that the different clones, but in the same type of soil, has less difference than the same clone in two completely different types of soil. And that is something that you cannot find in many conditions. You can only find probably in one of the most noble grape varieties, that is, the name is Pinot Noir. But it is not something that you can find in some very stable grape varieties like Cabernet Merlot, that are probably one of the reasons because they call international grape varieties. So when we talk about factors that they have an influence in terms of chronological influence, a hierarchical influence, the first one has the non-modificable aspect. And one of the two first is soil and climate. So it's something that you find and you cannot change. The second aspect is the aspect that you can change, or you can interact for them in terms to influence. One is absolutely the vineyards, and in the vineyards it's very important the material, so the rootstock and the clones that we are using. It's very, very important the soil management. Pay attention how they are listed. And the winter tillage, the cover crop, and the fertilization. That are the main aspects to focus when you are in the terroir of Tuscany. Another very important aspect that became more and more important with the climate change is related to the canopy management. And when we are talking about canopy management, I'm referring to trimming or no trimming, like today it's very important, like they were using in the past. If you go to Montalcino and you talk with some very good producers, they were not trimming. They were, how do you say in Montalcino? Arrotolare the local practice to avoid trimming. That is an aspect that became more and more important if you want to do a Sangiovese. Or the leafing, in terms probably to have an open cluster, and so it became very important to understand which is the time of leafing. And type of pruning, because in function of the type of pruning, Guyot or Cordon Spurel, you can completely change the morphology of the cluster, and you probably can make some important decision in terms of the harvest time. This is another very crucial aspect. And in the cellar became after so important aspect. So look how much aspects are related to the vineyards and probably related to soil and climate. And in the cellar you have the vinification, and what is important is the level of the type of extraction and the intensity of the extraction, and the type of aging related to three very important things: type, size, and also the time that you want to spend in it. Like you can see, there are a very important numbers of viticultural aspects that has to be tailor-fitted or tailor-made in function and strongly related to the type of climate and the type of soil that you have in front of you. And I wanted to say something that we proved by ourselves. There is no single model that works for Sangiovese, especially for Sangiovese, and especially in the different terroir of Tuscany. You need really to adapt every single element, and some elements became in one terroir more important than the other one. If you want to relate to soil, there are some very precise aspects about soils that became very important. First first one is the origin. The second one is the stone, the skeleton, what we call that influence one very important thing, that is the drainage. And why drainage? Because Sangiovese is a great variety that has a sensibility to water like anybody else. So a very small amount of water Sangiovese can really get. And Sangiovese is a great variety completely different than Syrah or Merlot. The Syrah and Merlot are a great variety that they keep the stomachs open, and if it is warm, it doesn't matter, they still work. Sangiovese is like Grenache. That is the reason, because in the south of France you have the Grenache is aneuploidic type of varieties. So they close the stomach, they lose the leaf, but if they can find the water, they are able to restart in 1 second. And so it's a unique pump of water, Sangiovese. That is the reason, because Sangiovese express in a beautiful way in soils with a very rich drainage. Another aspect very important for Sangiovese, that a lot of time we are not thinking that is important in the viticulture side, is the oxygen, the amount of oxygen. Sangiovese always express very well in soils with high level oxygen. Why? Because it's a great variety that demands a lot of this oxygen, and it is a great variety that suffer a lot about stop of the growing vegetative sorry, because I'm getting inside some technical aspect that is quite difficult to explain in English, but Sangiovese has a problem to stop and restart the vegetative characterization. And that is strongly related to Sangiovese. And when Sangiovese stop, develop a lot of phenols, and phenols, you know, that are tannins. For many reasons, we think that Sangiovese is a great variety that has a very high amount of tannins. I'm correctly, sorry for that. Sangiovese doesn't have a lot of tannin, but in a very stress condition, develop a lot of tannins like anybody else. So
when you say lack of oxygen, is that lack of oxygen in the soil?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that is the reason, because we try to work in function to bring oxygen into the soil, and that is the reason because we decided to study precisely the type of soil that we have in order to evaluate what type of soil management we need to adapt in the different type of soil, because oxygen is a key element for Sangiovese like water, probably the two most important elements in the soil. Another very important is the level of carbonate, but that is a very generic. Yeah, Jill?
When you're talking about drainage, you didn't mention before things that you can influence in the vineyards. In Bordeaux, they put a lot of drains into the soil because they have too much water.
Yeah.
Is that never a problem in Tuscany? Do you not have
we work in the same way.
Also,
we work in the same way.
Yeah,
we work in the same way. Drainage is very important. I remember to replant, I started to work in Tuscany in 2003. That was my first vintage, and that was the time where we were cleaning the soil from stone. Right now, we are not removing stone from the soil, because this is an important element to avoid problem of stop of the growing season. That is something that we need also related to climate change. When temperature going up 40 degrees is something that is strongly related. If you have oxygen in the soil, the plant works much more better, has a better growing season, and change completely the tannin structure of the wine that you can produce.
But do you have vineyards with artificial drainage in the soil?
Yes.
You do.
And we work with tillage, winter tillage, in function to have a perfect drainage during the spring. Another important aspect is the structure and the organic compounds. Tuscany has a typical type of soil with a very low amount of organics. The organics is very important for structure. That is the reason, because if you arrive at here, almost 250 hectares that we are in Tuscany right now, they are under cover crop, but we utilize different type of cover crop in function of the type of soil that we have. If we are in a clay, we use not legumes, but we are using gramineaceae, so wheat. But if you are in a very type like a galestro or something like a fleche, we try to grow legumes because they are type of soil that you need to improve the amount of organic compounds that are inside. And so it's a very tailor-made aspect that we decided to develop, and that is the reason because in 2012 we decided to develop a very important research, and it is a research that is made by the glass. It is not made by a chemical analysis or some. It is related also to chemical analysis that we do in the field, but you will see the work that we do. The final goal for the Sangiovese is really to look, avoid high availability of water, so like we call winter tillage and summer decision. Try to develop open cluster. You know that Sangiovese is like a thick cluster, and you need to work in terms to open the cluster. You can make a decision by the clones, but more important is the type of soil that you are using, and the type of also a combination of nitrogen and potassium that you are related. Avoid vegetative arrest. I will talk a lot about these type of things tonight because it's a very important aspect. You can see a vineyard and you can easily understand the quality of the tannins that you will have in the wine that come out from this vineyard. Easily. Like if you are in a Sauvignon Blanc and you want to taste if it is Sauvignon Blanc in the field or not Sauvignon Blanc, easily in a Sangiovese you can understand the quality of the tannins if you see the soil and if you see how the canopy was developed during the vintage. Postpone harvest time, that is very important. You know that Sangiovese, especially in certain type of soil, can have a very big difference in terms of between analytical chemical maturation and phenolic maturation. That is the reason because we do not believe that this is a place for Merlot, for Cabernet Sauvignon, because the Merlot has a month of distance in terms of the true harvest time. And because it's ripening in terms of analytical compound in the middle of August, but if you want really to reach the phenolic maturation, probably you have to harvest in the middle of September. And that is the reason because we decided to throw away the Merlot. And for the same reason, Cabernet doesn't really ripe in this condition because there's a very dyschronia between phenolic maturation and analytical maturation. And try to mitigate the heterogeneity of the soil. I don't know if you are familiar with Tuscany, but if you see all the soils, it's like a leopard scale. No? Why? Because in Tuscany, every 5 meters, 10 meters, you have a change. It's natural, and you will see why they are. You have this heterogeneity of the soil. That is something that you cannot see in some other origin of soil, where they have a different. They were formed in a different way, and so that is the reason. Because in 2012, also from my previous job, I decided to bring in this project the precise viticulture. Today we feed, we spray, we prune precisely. It means that we do analysis and we harvest also because we have a machine with satellite control in terms to mitigate this heterogeneity of soils, and where we cannot mitigate, we decide also to harvest separately, and the difference can be very, very important. But the final goal is try to develop balance, but I like also to say balance in the direction of stress, because Sangiovese loves a little bit of stress. The problem is when the stress became too strong and it stopped off working. Now is the time to open what you have in front of you. And so we decided to develop this special case, and inside the case you have what we are tasting tonight. Tonight we'll be tasting the end of the evening also some final blends, our wines, but I want really to bring you, in terms of tasting, the purity of soil. And in this case, you have the 6 most important type of soil from Tuscany. I would like to bring you inside the origin of this type of soils, because it will be so important to understand the origin, how much they are old, and how they are formed, in terms to understand the type of wine, the style of wine that you can develop in this type of soil. Yeah. Sì, sì, sì.
Adesso è svelato, sei come bambini adesso a fare le cose.
Okay, we go back because we have some people that live at 5 to 7, so we are really to rush. You will have time, and if you want, we can send to you a case of this type of soil to have in your house.
Ok.
For sure. For sure. Sorry. Okay, can we start again? And okay, so these are the type of soils that you have right now in Tuscany. The most important soil. You will have flesh, alvarese, sand, clay, mix of sand and clay with calcium carbonated. So we have an heterogeneity of soil in Tuscany that is quite unique. And you can see from this special case. This is not something that we have selected. It's something that easily you can see in the vineyards. And I really hope that thanks to the beautiful heterogeneity of color, you can also understand the terroir where you are when you are traveling in Tuscany. I want just to show you the base of the presentation of tonight. Started on 2012. All our vinification are in average of 100 hectoliters for tank, and that is the number of cuvées that we did from 2012 to 2018 to develop the research that we want to present tonight. It's almost 600 different cuvées that we analyzed. We harvest separately in terms to enhance the difference between the soil and in terms to enhance and try to evaluate the descriptors of the wines that we want to produce. Cuvée is a single plot selection. So cuvée is in French, sorry my French influence. But, a blend. But, yes. No, I said six.
Invece lo posso, allora è
Yeah, single plot selection. So, when you want to analyze the soils, you have to know that you have 2 major categories. One is old soil, and the other one is young soil. Old soils are formed come from rocks. The young soil come from sand, from sediment. So the soil has a completely different origin, strongly related to the age. When we want to know the soils, you have to put in one mark the era, the period, and the head. So the old soil are soil that are only related to tertiary and Mesozoic, And there are soil that are in Tuscany are Macigno, Alberese, Flish, and Pietraforte. Probably. Okay. And the young soils are all the soils that has less than 5 millions. And less than 5 millions means that they are from the Pliocene, Pleistocene, and Eocene, and are the soil that are sandy soil, clay soil, and mix and sand, that are the very young type of soil that you can have in Tuscany. Probably if you see in the presentation, it's much more easy to see.
Non ce l'abbiamo qui
Okay, sorry, but I wanted to put in So it seems a stupid job, but this is my method to analyze things, and if you want, but it's very. I have a second part of the schema where actually you have the effect on the wines that probably will send to you by mail, or if somebody wants to ask me, because there is also a little bit of privacy in this job that we would like to analyze how to show. But in Tuscany, you have some old type of soil. The typical type of soil very old are Macigno and Pietraforte. These are the soil that come from sandstone.
I think we missed this page.
Yeah. No, you have the page with only the first
very old soil. Only that one.
Okay. So now we are analyzing the very old type of soil, and the very old type of soil in Tuscany are 4 different type of soils. The first one is Macigno, is has an origin from sand, so from sandstone. And the second one is Pietraforte. Pietraforte is located in Montalcino. Macigno is located in Chianti Classico. The third type of old soil is flish. And the flish is can be typically of Montalcino, but also you can find in Chianti Classico. When it is located in Montalcino, the name is Santa Flora. When it is located in Chianti Classico, the name is Sillano. Sillano. But they are very, very similar. Flish is mostly made by 2/3 of argilla and 1/3 of sand. And after that you have the fourth type of soil, that is Alberese. Alberese is a limestone, comes from limestone, is a very hard type of soil. It's a soil that is only located in Chianti Classico, and it is a soil that is made by a very precise mix of loam, clay, and sand, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Sorry. It's half clay and half sand. Half clay and half sand, and the flish is 2/3 clay and 1/3 sand. Sorry about that. It's my mistake. It's my mistake. No. It's I don't like because I'm a little bit because I would like that you have a possibility to see, but actually you do not have. So I hope that you can really follow these 4 different type of soil. So you say, why you are not talking about galestro? That is probably the most important and the most popular. Galestro is not a type of soil. Galestro is a type of structure. So all these 4 different type of soils, Pietraforte, Macigno, Alberese, and Flish, can be present in the vineyard with the galestro form. And the galestro form is something unique in Tuscany is a schist, and it is a form that enhances the concentration in terms of flavor and enhances also the concentration in terms of aromas, and enhances also the feeling of minerality that you have on the palate. And it is strongly related to acidity, because acidity in Galestro is higher, and the combination of tannins and acidity give this special feeling of minerality that is typically of Galestro. Paola, stampiamo per tutti anche la parte bassa, sì, così si sente. So, in the Macigno and Pietraforte, you develop wines that are very luscious, that has a medium-high amount of tannins, but the tannins are soft. Remember that they are soils that come from sand. In the Flèche, you are developing wines with a very typical red cherry aspect, blackberry. They can be quite leafy, and they have always a meaty, gamey character. That is where Sangiovese developed this beautiful irony aspect that is typically of very precise area. So it's like the Saint-Estèphe of Bordeaux, where really you have this gaminess that you feel inside the wine. I'm not talking about bread. In Del Berese, it's a completely different type of soil. It's a very rich in terms of calcareous. It's not only red cherry, but you start to have the plum, and you start also to have a character of a bloody orange. The tannins are medium-high, and the tannins between the four different type of soil are completely different. Pietraforte, medium-high level, very soft and luscious. In the Flèche, the tannins are firm and very angular. In the Alberese, the tannins are a little bit more rustic. Okay? So completely different tannin structure that is very important to analyze when you develop wines like this.
I beg your pardon, I think I've lost the flavors, typical flavors of Macigno and Pietraforte.
We will give you, because you can follow much better, I think that is